In the Bible, there's this king by the name of Solomon, and he is rich and powerful, but even he still has this thirst. He's tried many different things to satisfy it, but he's frustrated because nothing seems to quench this inner desire that he has. He writes about it in a book of the Bible called Ecclesiastes, which is pretty much a diary that chronicles his search for satisfaction. And in the book of Ecclesiastes, he writes and he describes what it's like to be thirsty. Solomon says that when you're thirsty, that life seems meaningless. In Ecclesiastes chapter 2, he writes these words. He says, life is meaningless, all meaningless. You spend your life working, what do you have to show for it? He says, the world just stays the same. I don't know, do you ever feel that way? Like there's not much purpose to life? I mean, why not just sleep in? Because the alarm clock goes off, we get out of bed, get ready, go to work, make a little money, come home, eat dinner, watch TV, go to bed. The alarm clock goes off. It's just the same thing every day. And so Solomon points out that on the treadmill of life, you don't always feel like you're going anywhere. It's like that movie, Groundhog Day. Nothing really seems to change. And at some point in the monotony of life, whether it's on your job or in your marriage, your mouth starts to get a little dry. And you start to wonder if there isn't something more. Solomon points out that when we're thirsty, life seems unsatisfying. He says no matter how much we hear, we're never content. No matter how much we see, we're never satisfied. He said this in the days before the iPod or the internet or satellite TV, but it's still true today. We are overloaded with information and we have all kinds of entertainment, but those things really don't do much to satisfy us. They may numb our thirst to a degree, but in the end, it's kind of like drinking salt water. You taste a little bit, it just makes you more thirsty. In Ecclesiastes 2, Solomon also points out that when you're thirsty, life seems useless. Verse 11 says, no one remembers what has happened in the past, and no one in the future will remember what has happened between now and then. But most of us want to be a part of something that will last. We want to make a difference with our lives, and so we pour ourselves into our job, trying to get some recognition or earn the right promotion. We might even volunteer for some good social cause. But I don't know. You think we'll be remembered? Let me ask you this question. Do you know the names of your great-grandparents? Don't feel bad if you don't. Very few people do. So Solomon just points out this very simple truth that in a few years from now, nobody's going to remember you and me. Most of us can relate to the way Solomon is feeling. Nothing in his life seems to satisfy him. Whatever he tries, it just leaves him frustrated, discouraged, but he's determined. He's willing to try anything. He wants to find satisfaction, so he tries money and stuff, and he becomes the most wealthy man the world has known. He tries sex and relationships, and the man collects 700 wives and 300 concubines. He tries power, and Solomon becomes the mightiest king of his day. But after he has tried all these things, after he has taken a drink of everything he can find, he comes to a real simple conclusion. Solomon says, meaningless, meaningless. It's all meaningless. Jesus reveals himself as the living water that will forever satisfy, but we just remain convinced that we can find more satisfying water on our own. In the book of Jeremiah, God says this to his people. He says, they have rejected me, the living water, but they have dug for themselves their own wells. And God says, but their wells don't hold water. And instead of drinking of the living water, we've tried to find water on our own, and God just says, the wells you're digging, they don't hold water. Many of us have tried to find water at the well of possessions. We start to think if we could just have a little more, we'd be satisfied. And we equate our worth and the worth of others by how much we have. Psychology Today surveyed 20,000 people and found 74% of them agreed with this statement: money is how we keep score. And yet in Forbes magazine, when they did their 75th anniversary issue, they committed much of the 570 pages to trying to answer this question. Why do we feel so bad when we have it so good? They asked 11 of their best writers to probe and investigate why Americans who are living so well oftentimes complain about being depressed and unhappy. The scriptures teach that when we make money our measure of success, we'll always come up short. Ecclesiastes 5:10 says, whoever loves money never has enough money. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with his income. I read recently in a money magazine that most people believe that if they just made between 20 and 40% more, they would be happy. But you can see where that kind of thinking leads. Once we get that, then we need another 20 or 40%. And we're trapped in this perpetual cycle, doomed to chase after more and more without any hope of satisfaction. In the Gospel of Luke, Jesus says real life is not measured in how much you own. He understands that our lives will never find satisfaction with money and with stuff. And yet we've also tried to quench our thirst at the well of achievement. Fulfillment from achievements lasts for a short while, but then you have to do something more, something better. That's why so many professional athletes and business people have a hard time retiring. They've given everything to their work, hoping that it would fulfill them. A few years ago in the Texas Monthly, there was an interview done with Troy Aikman of the Dallas Cowboys. When he was a quarterback for them, he tells about the first night after he won his first Super Bowl. He didn't go out and party with his friends or celebrate with his teammates. He went up to his hotel room and he sat in silence. And he said all he could think about was the time he was a kid. And he dreamed about turning 16 so he could get his driver's license. He thought that would solve all of his problems. But he says, here I was at the top of professional football. And all I could ask myself was, now what? Now what? And that's the problem with achievements. No matter how much you achieve, you always have to do more. And many people try to find satisfaction at the well of appearance. And so we go to great lengths to improve it. A survey was done of people who regularly exercise in health clubs, and they were asked, is the primary reason you exercise to improve your health or your appearance? Most all of them said, appearance. See, we think if we could just look a little better, we'd be happy. And so we pay plastic surgeons large amounts of money for lifts and liposuctions, for tucks and transplants, and we may fry ourselves in tanning beds or eat organically, gorge ourselves on vitamins, we treadmill and triathlon, and those things are all fine and good, but we'll never find satisfaction by what we see in the mirror. The American economy depends on the fact that we're never going to be satisfied with our appearance. If tomorrow morning every American woke up and liked what they saw in the mirror, our entire economy would collapse. And if your focus is on your appearance, then you're going to be less and less satisfied. Because the wrinkles will start to come and the measurements will change, and the well of appearance just doesn't hold water. A few months ago, I was getting my hair cut and talking to the lady who was cutting my hair. In the middle of it, she stopped, she looked at the mirror in front of us, and she said to me, "Do you realize that your right ear sticks out further from your head than your left?" As I'm now staring at my huge protruding right ear in the mirror, I say to her, the only thing I can think of, is there anything we can do about that? She said, "No, I just thought you might want to know." Yeah, thanks for that, because for the last 27 years of my life, I haven't noticed, and now a day doesn't go by where I don't try to push my huge elephant-like ear up against the side of my head. At night, I lay on my pillow like this because I think it can't hurt. And if you're trying to find satisfaction at the well of appearance, you'll never be satisfied. There'll always be something about yourself you don't like. But for many of us, we've also tried to find satisfaction at the well of relationships. Like Jerry Maguire, we want someone to complete us. We think we would just be satisfied if we could find the right person or somehow turn our spouse into the right person. But we're inevitably disappointed. Most of us have been around long enough to know that our relationship with someone else doesn't ultimately satisfy. It may appease our thirst for a moment, but soon we discover we're thirsty again, and so we move on to a different well, desperate to quench our thirst. In John 10:10, Jesus said the thief, that's Satan, comes to steal and destroy. But then he says, "I have come that you may have life and have it to the full." He comes to satisfy us. Literally, Jesus says, "I have come to give you the life you've always dreamed of." Jesus came to give me a better life than I ever dreamed of. Better than a mansion on the beach with a theater in the master bedroom. Better than that. Better than a convertible Mercedes to take me to a private jet, to take me to a yacht in the Bahamas. Better than having my dream job. Better than waking up every morning next to the love of my life. Better than being rich, powerful, and successful. I mean, it just seems a little too good to be true. Jesus, can he really compete with the American dream? And yet, Jesus tells the woman at the well in John chapter 4 that he is the one who will truly satisfy. So I guess the real question is, how is it that Jesus satisfies us? There were 3 leading psychologists in the 20th century, and they identified 3 thirsts that every human has. Adler said everyone thirsts for purpose. Jung said everyone thirsts for security. And of course, Freud said everyone thirsts for love. And Jesus alone satisfies all 3. First, Jesus, the living water, satisfies our thirst for purpose. Nicolas Cage has said, "I wonder if there's a hole in the soul of my generation. We've inherited the American dream, but where do we take it? It's not just about cars and wealth." Ted Turner, one of the richest and most successful men in America, described his life as, quote, "a B-grade movie You don't want to leave in the middle, but you don't want to see it again. Madonna was asked, "Are you a happy person?" She replied, "I'm a tormented person. I have a lot of demons I'm wrestling with, but I want to be happy. I have moments of happiness. I'm working towards knowing myself, and I'm assuming that will bring me happiness." Eddie Murphy said, "I don't think there's anyone who feels like there isn't something missing in their life, no matter how much money you make, or how many cars or houses you have, or how many people you make happy." Maybe you hear those quotes and you think, wait a minute, those people are rich, they're powerful, they're successful. I thought that's what I was supposed to go after. I thought that's what life was about. Yeah, well, we've been lied to. The truth is, Jesus alone can give us a purpose for life. He can tell us where we came from. He can tell us why we're here, that the purpose of this life is to prepare for the next. And He can give us the hope of where we can spend eternity. Those pictures back in the mid-90s where if you looked at them just right, a certain image would jump out at you? Did you like those? Because I didn't. I'd be standing around looking at one of those pictures with some of my friends, and they'll be like, "Don't you see it? It's a beautiful sailboat in the clouds." And I'm like, am I getting punked here? Because I'm not seeing anything. And every 20 seconds, they're like, "Do you see it now? Do you see it now?" And life can be a little bit like one of those pictures. You look at it, and you look at it, and you know you're supposed to be seeing something, but it's just not making sense to you. But Jesus helps us understand life. He helps us know why we're here. Jesus knows why we were created, and He gives us meaning for our existence. He makes sense out of the picture of life. Well, Jesus satisfies our need for security. There are a lot of different fears out there. There's arachnophobia, the fear of spiders. There's claustrophobia, the fear of confined spaces. There's a few fears I have, like dentophobia, the fear of dentists, or penthrophobia, the fear of your mother-in-law. But we all share some fears. There is the fear of failure. Will I make a difference with my life? There's the fear of the future. What's going to happen to me? The fear of loneliness. Will anybody ever love me? The fear of death. Is it the end, or is it just the beginning? This week I ran across a very interesting website I'd heard of on the internet called The Death Clock. And all you have to do is simply type in your birth date, and it will give you your estimated date of expiration. My death date is Tuesday, September 14th, 2049. Well, that's good to know. I put it on my Palm Pilot. I have about 1,550,307,032, 30 seconds left to live. I guess it's the internet's friendly reminder that your life is slipping away. Of course, the obvious problem is the date is not guaranteed. It's scary enough to know we're gonna die, but we don't even know when. But Jesus, as the Son of God, offers us freedom from those fears. Many times I have sat at the bedside of Christians and I've been amazed at how they've experienced death. Instead of experiencing the fear, they experience joy and anticipation. David said in the Psalms, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will not fear, for you are with me." And one of the last things Jesus said to his followers was, "I will never leave you or forsake you." It's not to say that you won't go through difficult times, that you won't go through valleys, but it is to say you won't go through them alone. And there is great security in that. But more than anything else, Jesus satisfies our thirst for love. Love is a word a lot of us have learned to be leery of. It's not that we haven't tried to find satisfaction at the well of romantic love. We have. And yeah, it satisfies us for a while, temporarily. But I think most of us have become jaded because our feelings start to fade, or the person we love lets us down, and when we love, we just love more carefully. We lower our expectations, we put up our guard because deep down we know this is going to disappoint us too. It's not to say that love isn't great and wonderful. It is. God gave it to us. It probably satisfies more than anything else on this earth. But in the end, it still leaves us asking, is this it? And I think there are a lot of people who don't realize that there is a perfect love. There is a love that is without conditions. That's how the Bible describes God's love for us. It doesn't fade with time. It doesn't bail when things get tough. It is a love that is always there. Listen to the way the Bible describes God's love for us. What can separate us from the love of God? Does it mean He no longer loves us if we have trouble or disaster, or are persecuted or hungry or cold or in danger or threatened with death? No. In fact, none of this can faze us because of Jesus' love. And I am convinced that nothing can ever separate us from His love. Death can't, and life can't, the angels can't, and the demons can't. Our fears for today, our worries about tomorrow, and even the powers of hell can't keep God's love away. Whether we are high above the sky or in the deepest ocean, nothing in all creation will ever be able to separate us from the love of God that is revealed in Christ Jesus. In the book Sahara Unveiled, there's the story about two Algerians who were traveling through the desert when their truck broke down. They nearly died of thirst while they waited 3 weeks before being rescued. The intense sun drove them underneath their truck where they found shade, and that's where they waited day after day. They had enough food to eat, but they were afraid the food would intensify their thirst. They understood people in the desert don't die of hunger, they die of thirst. Doctors tell us that thirst can be the most terrible of all human sufferings. In fact, there are Greek-based words to describe the stages of human thirst. For example, the Sahara is dipsogenic, meaning thirst-provoking. Someone without water in the desert will instantly develop eudipsia, ordinary thirst. Hyperdipsia will quickly follow, meaning temporary and intense thirst, but without relief, they will soon progress to polydipsia, sustained and excessive thirst. And polydipsia means the kind of thirst that drives one to drink anything. There are specialized terms for such behavior, including uroposia, the drinking of urine, and hemoposia, the drinking of blood. There is no word, however, to describe what these two Algerians did in order to satisfy their thirst. They drank from the radiator. They were so desperate to quench this thirst that they were literally willing to drink poison. And yet we have our own list of thirst quenchers. I don't know that the list is much different than when Solomon was king. Money, sex, power, basically anything that we think will satisfy us. At best, it satisfies us for a moment, but when it becomes the focus of our life, it can literally destroy us. And Jesus is just waiting for us to accept his free gift of living water. Why would we choose the radiator? But when we refused Jesus, we are not just choosing to be unsatisfied, we are choosing death. You see, Jesus alone offers satisfaction. And drinking his water gives us not just that, but it also gives us eternal life. We've all seen the disturbing images on television of children starving to death. They've been starving for so long that they've used up their muscle and fat. Their limbs are literally skin on bone, and their stomachs are bloated. Their hair has turned from brown to reddish and has dried out. But when you're hungry that long without any satisfaction, here's what happens. You no longer feel hunger pangs. Your body no longer cries out for food, and so these children will stop searching. They'll stop crying out for the very nourishment that will bring them life. They're no longer hungry. And I've seen that same thing happen spiritually. They've been so thirsty for so long, they don't even expect relief. They don't look for it anymore. And the world is full of people so delirious with thirst that they lose the ability to recognize the very water that would save them. When children are in this condition, you can offer them milk or rice and they'll just simply refuse it. But workers have discovered if you can coax them or force them into just tasting it and taking a bite, oftentimes their appetite will return. And I don't know, maybe it's been a while since you've been thirsty. Water no longer holds your interests. But the Bible says, taste and see that the Lord is good. And if you take a nice long drink of the living water, maybe your thirst will return, and this time you'll be satisfied. King Solomon, at the end of his diary, after trying everything his heart desires, makes this conclusion, that the whole purpose of man is God. Saint Augustine expressed it nicely. He said, "Lord, our hearts are restless until they find rest in you." I don't know what well you find yourself at. You might not even feel thirst. But I want you to listen to this invitation from Jesus. He says, "Whoever is thirsty can come and drink freely from the spring of the water of life." The water of life.